My name's Ian Hamlin. I'm secretary of the Friends Group, which is a Stevenson-based charity that's been running for 25 years, and our remit is to improve the green spaces in Stevenson and surrounding towns for the benefit of the environment and local people. So I'm going to talk a bit about some of the projects that we've been working on in the past, are working on at the moment, and will work on in the immediate future. This is Kerlaw Glen. It's one of many green spaces in Stevenson. We're very lucky to have a rich natural heritage. And it's one of many iconic green spaces. It's part of the identity of the people of Stevenson, not least because generation after generation of Stevenstonian has played as children in Stevenson Burn and played up and down the Glen. And we're really lucky that it's still around. It's common good land, which is perhaps one of the reasons it's not been destroyed like many of the other green spaces in Stevenson. This is a similar site in terms of cultural importance. It's Stevenson Beach and Stevenson Dunes. Again, generation after generation have played in the dunes, and so it is part of Stevenson. When people think of Stevenson, when they think of home, they tend to think of the beach and the dunes. The Ardeer Peninsula as well is an iconic site, not just because of its industrial heritage, but also its natural heritage. I mean, it's a gigantic big dune system, one of the most important wildlife sites in Scotland, certainly the most important wildlife site in North Ayrshire. And again, it's part of many people's lives is taking their dogs a long walk down the peninsula. We are keen to protect the cultural and natural heritage that we have left in Stevenson, and as well as campaigning to save sites like the Ardeer Peninsula that's under threat from development by the council and the various landowners. We also are proactive in attempts to improve the environment. So here you can see Ardeer Quarry a couple of years ago, and this was a site of a recent tree planting project. This is the site after we planted a few thousand trees earlier this year to create about 3.5 hectares of community woodland. It might take a few years, but I reckon give it about 5 or 6 years and there'll be a tangible sense of woodland. We created a pathway through it so that eventually it will become a woodland walk joined up with the current path network at Ardeer Quarry to allow visitors more of a diversity of interesting walks to take. This is the pond that the Friends Group created at Ardeer Quarry many years ago now. It's about 110 metres long, and to the left is about a hectare of woodland composed mainly of aspen, willow, hazel and alder that the group planted at the same time. We have just submitted a planning application for a new wetland elsewhere at Ardeer Quarry of about a hectare in area. This is one of the technical drawings we commissioned for the wetland, and we hope that next year, all things going well, it will be created and it will provide an interesting focal point for the site and also a great home for not just wintering wildfowl but also lots of interesting wetland plants and invertebrates. About 7 years ago we created an orchard at Ardeer Quarry. This is an orchard of about 100 trees. At the moment we've got permission to create a new orchard at the site, an extra orchard with 270 new fruit trees. We're going to plant the first of those this season and then the rest of them hopefully next planting season. This is Stevenson Beach Park. It's about 1 kilometre in length and there's a huge area of dead space there, nothing apart from lawn that doesn't get used intensively. So for the past 10 years we've been working with the council to rewild parts of the site, and you can see here a large area of grassland which is a result of that rewilding, and this is very rich grassland in terms of flowers. It might be hard to see in this video, but there's vast quantities. of various kinds of flowers, bird's-foot trefoil, oxeye daisy, and knapweed and sorrel and all kinds of things carpeting the grasslands here. So they're attractive places to walk through, and in the evenings the people who live in the houses across there, they see barn owls hunting apparently over the grasslands. So it's a long-running project which we're continuing to pursue, and I think we'll be pursuing for a few years yet. Here's a slide of some flowers at the beach park. If you're wandering through the beach park between May and August, there's a huge density and diversity of wildflowers, including sometimes some quite impressive displays of orchids. This is a speciality of the Stevenson Beach area. This is a female Epiolus bee, a species of cuckoo bee that attacks the nests of Caletes floralis, a rare mining bee that you find at Stevenson Beach. This is the male of the species, photographed in Stevenson Dunes, and it's one of many rare invertebrates that we're very concerned about and that we take a lot of effort to try and protect. This is a very rare species in Scotland. In fact, we suspect it might actually be a cryptic species, a new cryptic species, i.e. a species which hasn't been recorded to science simply because it looks extremely like other similar species of Epiolus. And there are various biological, ecological reasons to suspect this that I won't go into. But what we've been doing for the past few years is taking genetic samples from this species and similar species and sending them to a professor of genetics in Germany who's working with us to try and figure out whether or not this is a new species of bee which is restricted to the west coast of Scotland. So we do various things to protect the dune invertebrates and the dune plants. One of them is finding ways to protect the sand dunes. This was an expensive sand fencing project that we embarked on a year or two ago, and it was designed to protect the dunes and to build new dunes. And you can see between the fences here, it's working. The new dunes are forming and vegetating. And the idea is you leave the fences in place for 2 or 3 years, and by that point you'd be amazed by how quickly the dunes have actually formed within the fence. This one didn't go quite according to plan. There was a huge storm after a year that demolished the fence. Usually you get a window of about 2 or 3 years, but unfortunately the weather didn't play ball, and we're currently regrouping and thinking of new ways to protect the dunes and new projects to make sure the dunes are preserved for the future. This looks a bit like a sand dune, but actually it's a bee nesting bank at Ardeer Quarry. We put this in, how long ago? 3 or 4 years ago now, probably. Most bee species like nesting in loose sand. So we put this in facing south to attract bees and wasps, and we have had quite a bit of success. One of the species to take up residence is Andruna coetana. This is a female photographed foraging on knapweed. This is a female laden with pollen arriving back at a nest site at Ardeer Quarry. And this is the cuckoo bee of Andruna coetana. This is Nomada obtusifrons, which is a very rare bee, and Ardeer Quarry is a remarkable site, even in a British context, because it has such a strong population of this very rare cuckoo bee. So there are various projects that we're engaged in at the moment to improve green spaces and protect biodiversity. And there are other projects that are in the pipeline at various stages of progression. Some of the ones we'll be doing over the next few years are the creation of an orchard at Bourtree Hill, the creation of some community woodlands, an orchard and ponds in the green space in Broomlands. Rewilding Stevenson Beach Park is an ongoing project. We've some big aspirations there to make it a bit of a beauty spot, which will be a fantastic place to visit for local people and tourists alike. So we're going to undertake a second phase of community consultation over the next few months on that project. Something we've got permission for and that we'll be pursuing next year is the restoration of Holme Plantation in Ardrossan. Home Plantation was a beauty spot 100 years ago. You can see in this photograph it's got a picturesque stream with sandy banks and beautiful trees. And nowadays, unfortunately, it's pretty much lost most of its trees and the river's been canalised into a ditch. Basically, it's not a very nice site compared to what it was. So we are going to do a reasonably big engineering project to restore the natural character of the river and plant more trees, plant a bit of an orchard in there as well, put in some meadows. So that's one of the projects we're looking forward to implementing. And I think an important thing to say about our projects is we design them to be sustainable, i.e. we don't get involved in projects that require intensive management. So we wouldn't plant a wood that requires management over the next 1,000 years, or we wouldn't create a meadow that requires constant management, simply because if you embark on a project that requires lots of continuing management, the project's going to collapse, because you can't guarantee the community is going to manage it for any more than a few years before they lose interest. And similarly, the council is not really in a position of committing to manage projects. And even if they did commit, in our experience, these committals fall by the wayside in the face of budget cuts and other things that happen as time goes on. So we're continuing to come up with project ideas that we think will be sustainable ways to make lasting differences to community green spaces.